Hi everyone, welcome to the How Tactical Institute Uses IBM Watson Analytics to Gain a Deeper Understanding of Crime Analysis webcast. My name is Candace Taylor and I'm the Marketing and Sales for Cresco, and I would like to be your moderator for today's webcast. We first want to start off by thanking you all for joining. A quick note before we do get started. We will be recording the webcast and we'll send out a link of the recording to everyone as soon as it is available. Also, please feel free to ask questions throughout the webcast today by using the Q&A section on your control panel on your screen. We will review questions during the Q&A portion at the end of the webcast. I would like to introduce our presenters for today's webcast. Sanjeev Datta, Practice Director for Cresco, and Oliver Atera, Chief Operating Officer at Tactical Institute. Oliver will provide an overview on how Tactical Institute utilizes Watson Analytics for crime analysis, and Sanjeev will then provide a demo. With that, I would like to pass the floor over to Oliver to start the webcast. Oliver?
Thank you, Candace. I really appreciate it. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. I know your time is very valuable, so really very much appreciate it that you can give us an hour of your time. I also want to thank Cresco International for, number one, setting up this webinar, and probably more importantly for giving us their assistance and their tremendous expertise with Watson Analytics, which without them we definitely wouldn't be as far along as we are today. So Sanjeev and Cresco, thank you so much for that, and I can certainly see why you're one of IBM's premier partners. That said, hopefully we'll make this presentation informative as well as interesting. And so without any further ado, let me go ahead and get started and introduce the Tactical Institute and our service offering to you. So the Tactical Institute is in the preemptive threat notification service business. These terms that you see here I'm going to utilize throughout the presentation. But if you notice, there is one word that's missing on there, and that's product. That is because the Tactical Institute only provides a service offering and does not provide any products for sale. The other important word on here is ETradecraft. Sanjeev, next please. The ETradecraft, I always get asked what does it stand for? And basically we coined this term, but E stands for electronic. Tradecraft in the intelligence community typically refers to the activities associated with gaining intelligence. So we coined the term ETradecraft because it is what we invented over the last 17 years, and I'll go into that a little bit later on as well, but it is the specialized knowledge, the methodologies, the processing, the techniques that we here at Tactical Institute and our analysts utilize in order to analyze all open source material on a global basis on the internet for our two missions. One is to provide a preemptive threat notification service, and the other is for forensic investigations. This ETradecraft is in combination with Cresco what we have trained and continue to train Watson Analytics to help us with, and we'll go into that a little bit later as well. Can we, next slide please? So when you're looking at security, which is what our mission is to provide pre-intelligence, most of the security that's out there, the physical security, is reactive, meaning that if somebody shows up at your door with a gun, right, your security team has to deal with that event. So it is largely reactive, right? The threat has to be in action already for the security to deal with it. Whereas we're in the pre-intelligence business, meaning our job is to actually notify you that there is a danger to your charge, to your protected DB, to your building, whatever it may be, and that here's the person and here's where they're located. That is what's called pre-intelligence. So we're the proactive arm for any security detail that's out there. So basically, we're trying to avoid or eliminate the threats prior to them becoming actionable. Next slide, please. And you can see that these people spend a lot of money, especially corporations spend a lot of money on mainly their physical security. You can see Facebook, Jeff Zuckerberg's, right, $5 million. Last year was actually at $6.5 million. And the reason they do this, they have a very good reason to spend all this money on their security efforts, because as you can see, Al-Qaeda has actually called for the jihadists to eliminate, assassinate, however you want to call it, top business leaders in the United States, either at the workplace or at home, so that they can have a negative impact upon our economy. And there are direct threats to individuals by name, such as Mr. Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, or Jack Dorsey from Twitter. So this is a real and imminent threat, and we're here to, again, as I mentioned, try to assist in the preemptive portion of security services. Next slide, please. Before I can tell you where we are today, I have to tell you where we came from. TI is an evolutionary company that resulted from a company called Geocop. Our founder, Bob Dowling, who I will introduce in a minute, he invented a technology that did social media threat monitoring, and I have to tell you the sales went very well. Sold it to the FBI, DOJ, state fusion centers, state police departments, etc. The issue was the implementation did not go so well. So while the technology was sound and very useful, the people that we trained, meaning the customers that we trained, did not really have the aptitude or the amount of time necessary to correctly utilize this product. So what we did is we actually took a step back and did a deep dive into what the problem was. And the problem wasn't the technology. The problem was simply we could not train what it took us 17 years to perfect, i.e. the ETradecraft, on these customers in a day or 2 or 3 day training session. So we evolved from that company and said we are no longer going to sell any products. We are just going to utilize all of our products, be it Watson Analytics, open source material, other proprietary technologies, to in-house, to our analysts, so that we can provide a service to our customers. Next slide, please. And the key to this is social media. Oh, I'm sorry, I just lost the slide. So again, we are now in the service business. We provide a persistent, meaning 24/7 by 365 days, staffed operations where our analysts, which we call certified threat spotters, analyze the World Wide Web in order for us to find threats prior to them becoming actionable. Next slide, please. So the key to our mission is social media. Because social media, actually, there's been a lot of research done on this, and research data shows that individuals or groups of individuals who plan to conduct these violent acts, they are very likely to post their intentions, their threats, their manifestos, whatever you'd like to call them, on public, meaning non-private social networking sites, typically within 8 to 72 hours prior to them attempting to initiate these violent acts, and attacks on either public institutions or individuals. Next slide, please. So the first question I always get is, well, why isn't the government doing this? And the reason behind this is there are a few of them. Number one, there are legal restrictions. Number two, that there are access restrictions, meaning that the government is very worried about malware, spyware, viruses, etc. on their networks. So they're very much hamstrung by not having the unfettered, the unrestricted access that TI has. Furthermore, again, it is an ETradecraft issue, right? We invented this tradecraft, and so the government really doesn't have currently the training and the knowledge in order to do what we do on a daily basis. So it is an issue of training and aptitude. And you can see, this on the bottom there, the Belgian security forces actually spotted the Paris terror mastermind posting on Facebook with an ISIS flag on it, and nobody followed up. Well, that's an issue of tradecraft, right? And this is what we specialize in. Next slide, please. So while we do focus on media, on social media, it is by far not the only type of information that we access. We actually access the entire all open source material on the World Wide Web on a global basis, and that includes the deep dark web, which I'll be happy to explain later on. But basically it is about 90% of the World Wide Web. And we just don't do social media analysis. We access obviously social media, but also documents, video, images, audio, all on a global basis. And that includes all of the social media platforms. And I can tell you that it seems like a new one comes out on a weekly basis. And that is the difference between a service and a product. So if you have a new application, a new social media that comes out, Right now, a Muslim face came out recently, or Ogle came out recently. And these two platforms now, if you can go back just one slide, please. These two platforms, if you were to purchase a product, a social media monitoring product, it would take them months, if not years, to actually incorporate that new social media platform into their product. Whereas because we have human beings, analysts, looking at this, as soon as we find a new social media platform, we immediately analyze it, start creating accounts on it, and start monitoring it. So we are basically trying to stay ahead of the bad guys, if not on par with the bad guys. And as the landscape changes, so do we virtually in real time. Next slide, please. And just as an example, there is, we do spend a lot of time on the dark web, because that is where a lot of the bad guys do their dealings, figure out how to plan their next attack, learn how to build nefarious items. So a lot of that time is spent on there, and I can tell you that it is a dark and scary place to be on, and without having specialized knowledge of this, it's very dangerous to be on there. So, but that is a majority of what we do as well, or a large part of what we do as well. Next slide, please. So you may ask yourself, how can we say that we invented this ETradecraft? Well, the founder of our company, Bob Dowling, and I'm not going to read his career to you, but you can see he has had a truly unique career as a federal special agent. And throughout his career, he was pretty much tasked with one mission, and that is to find another source of pre-intelligence. And Bobby homed in on the fact that there's a lot of open source material out there that the bad guys are starting to utilize, starting with social media, etc. So over his 17-year career, he actually spent his time developing this tradecraft, again, our term ETradecraft, as well as perfecting it, so that we are now at the point, next slide please, where we can train our own analysts. We call them certified threat specialists. So when we decided to stop the product route and actually go to the service route, we had to figure out which are the best people in the world to do this. Do we have to get computer analysts? Who do we get? So we focused in, after doing a lot of analysis, we focused in on our veterans. Now, it states combat wounded veterans, and right now 100% of our analysts are combat wounded veterans, because basically we wanted to take those that sacrificed their most in the service of our country. But more importantly, the reason why we chose these people, not just to check a checkbox on a request for proposal response, no, because these people have received hundreds of thousands or sometimes millions of dollars of training from the U.S. government in specialty areas such as tactical operation or intelligence. So all we had to do is take that base knowledge that they already had, that base training, and put our ETradecraft on top of it. And I can tell you it has worked out beyond our wildest dreams. And I think one of the reasons is that these guys, they were trained, and girls, they were trained to do a mission, right? To protect the homeland and kill the bad guys. Their mission was not to sell, cars or, work at a hotel or what it is. No, they want to have a mission, and TI has been able to give them that mission. Now, they can no longer serve our country in uniform, but they can certainly serve our country and TI's clients by keeping our homeland and our clients safe. One of the issues we have because of their injuries is that we could not ask them to go to a physical building. So what we did do is we decided to build all of our technology from scratch, our servers, everything, etc. Then put all of our technologies on top of that, and then we would have one of our technicians actually fly or drive to the home office of our veterans. They would go ahead, make sure it has the highest level of security, both from a technology and a physical security perspective, start training them on the technology, and here we have a threat specialist that eventually, when they become certified, will become a certified threat specialist. Next slide, please. So typically, all of our guys, they have either 2 or 3 very large monitors that they monitor on a 24/7 basis. And it's not uncommon that you can see them sitting there, and they have a dashboard, as you can see down there on the right, where they have upwards of 50 different data sources open. So they may have a bunch of different social media platforms on one screen, but then they can have a map on another, maybe a video playing on another, and an audio recording playing on another section of the screen. So with our technology, the only restriction or limitation that our threat specialists have in terms of how many data sources they have open is the amount of real estate on the screens, as well as their own cognitive ability, which is what IBM Watson is helping us with in terms of being a force multiplier, doing exactly what these guys do. Next slide, please. Now, as I mentioned to you, the reason why the product, the GeoCop product, was not very successful in its usage is because there was no collaboration, there was no training. So TI is fortunate enough to actually have access to a law enforcement sensitive secure portal, which Bob Dowling invented, DARPA created, and Carnegie Mellon certified. It is one of the most secure portals in the United States. It is shared with, access is had by up to 15,000 law enforcement agents from all over the world, typically in the intelligence and investigative arenas. But TI has its own little slice of heaven in there, which what we utilize it for is a collaboration effort. So once one of our threat specialists or Watson Analytics identifies a threat, the next thing we have to do is then validate that threat, locate that threat, and then go ahead and, if it's deemed actionable, notify our clients, and depending on the severity of the threat, law enforcement. And this is what this portal allows us to do. So once a threat is identified, it's posted on this portal. All of our analysts that are not not working on another client's specific threat, then go ahead, collaborate it so that we can do those steps, the identification, the validation, the location, and then the notification. Our job is to try to get that done in minutes rather than hours so that the threat cannot become actionable before we let our clients notice or notify them. Okay, next slide, please. The issue, and I'm going to talk to you about why there is a somewhat fallacy of geolocation media media monitoring products out there. These products that are out there, they focus on a specific location around a client or a client's property, be it a school, a business, nuclear plant, whatever it may be. And the issue with that is that there's something wrong with the people that are attempting to initiate these threats, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't be thinking about initiating these threats. But so they want to be noticed. They want to, prior to them executing these threats, they want to get recognition. But they're also smart enough not to want to be caught prior to them executing these attacks. Therefore, a lot of them post it on social media or on other open source areas, which, as I stated earlier, but they do not enable their geolocation. And there is no product in the world that's going to find, outside of Watson Analytics, by the way, but there's no geolocation product out there that would find this threat if the geolocation is turned off. So what that means is, if you can go to the next slide, please, what that means is we actually have to search the entire world prior to us focusing in on the location. Because here you can see, right, we did this analysis on Donald Trump, and you can see this is one of our products, but it's based on an analysis that we did for Mr. Trump based on our ETradecraft. These two screens have the exact same search parameters, the exact same time frame. Actually, the one on the right is a half an hour less because I couldn't cram all the threats in there. And the one on the left is where these threats actually had the posters with geolocation enabled, either on their phone or on their computer, their application, etc. Whereas on the right are all the threats where the geolocation was disabled. Now, if you notice on the left, there's less than 50 threats. On the right, there are 428 threats. So that means that less than 12% of the threats that are issued during that time frame actually had the posters with geolocation enabled. And that's the reason why we actually search the entire world, the entire internet, throughout the world in order to find these threats, because again, a lot of them will not have geolocation enabled, and if we only focus on a specific area, we are very likely to miss that threat. Next slide, please. However, there is a reason to have a geodome, people call them geobubble, whatever it may be, because there are threats within that location that may affect our client but are not specified against them. So for instance, if our client were sitting at a restaurant with his family having dinner and a riot breaks out a block to the east of him, now that riot is not directed at him, But if it goes towards him and his family, it could have a negative impact on his safety. Therefore, we could identify that threat based in our Geodome, immediately notify our client, including the best egress route to avoid the danger. Next slide, please. And just to make my point, one more, please. Well, just to make my point, right, here are two posts. These are just two regular Twitter posts, but you can see the gentleman on the left, Truth to Power, right? He does not say anything bad about anybody, and you can see that his geolocation is enabled. However, the gentleman on the right, or the individual on the right, he spouts actually some very bad things, but he does not want anybody to know where they are. Again, geolocation enabled, a typical social media monitoring product would not be able to find that. Next slide, please. So this is where we come to Watson Analytics. When we teamed up with IBM and with Cresco International, we did so specifically because there are billions of pieces of data on the internet. And it is impossible, whether we have 100 analysts, our certified threat specialists, or 1,000, we still would not be able to sift through all that data. And that's where Watson Analytics comes in. We have trained Watson Analytics to basically be a force multiplier, to be like one of our threat specialists, to help us in the identification of potential threats. Once Watson finds these threats, again, based on our ETradecraft, then we pull it out from Watson Analytics, give it to our threat specialists so they can collaborate it, and then finish the mission that Watson Analytics started, which is basically validating, locating the threat so we can notify our clients. Watson truly has been immeasurable in its worth in terms of being that force multiplier for us, and has done a job that exceeds all of our expectations. And again, I just want to thank Cresco for all their advice and expertise in helping us get to this point with Watson Analytics today. Sanjeev?
Thanks so much, Oliver. And you set the stage perfectly for this next slide, which is basically, what's Cresco's role. And as you mentioned, it's very difficult it's actually humanly impossible to go and look at every tweet on every social media. And I think that's where, when we heard your business case, we decided that Watson Analytics was the right tool for what you're trying to achieve. And so that brings us to what's Cresco's role. We're an award-winning IBM business partner. We're based in Dallas. We have multiple locations, as you can see on your screen. And what we do is we are actually system integrators. We focus on IBM solutions and on IBM analytics software. Watson Analytics being one of them, but we do have many more products that we support, and we integrate together to make sure that the client is getting exactly what they need. And also, what we've launched probably more than a year ago was a service called WA3D. What this is Watson Analytics 3 days. So if in your organization, if you have the need, maybe from a security standpoint or from just understanding your customer base and what people are talking about your organization on social media, this is where we can help. So there's more information on our website, and I'll be more than happy to talk about it in the Q&A session if you have these questions. But what I wanted to do was just explain to you, for those folks who are not familiar with what is Watson Analytics. And it's part of IBM's analytics suite of product. And what it actually does is make sure that anyone who's using the product, first of all, is self-service, right? So it is self-service analytics. It is smarter decision making. It makes sure that organizations or individuals who are spending, as an analyst or someone who's just trying to find data, information, and turn that into an insight in an organization, is spending less amount of time doing that. And so you'll see there's a lot of automation, there's a lot of intelligence built into the product that makes it easy for organizations like Tactical Institute to use these products with minimum training but maximum damage, right? And so what this does is it goes back to looking at what are the other products out there and why is this the most suitable product for what Tactical Institute wants to do. Now, it's not a desktop product, so it is a cloud web-based hosted by IBM. So it's trusted by IBM, and you don't need to have any installs or spend time configuring. All you do is you sign up on the website and you start right away. And I'll show you that in the demonstration. Okay. The other thing is that when you're looking at data, a lot of times, whether you're new at your job or you've been given a new data set and you're trying to analyze it, a lot of time is spent on analyzing the data, making sure that the data is prepared in a way that you can consume it or the system can consume it, right? And so the challenge is, instead of having an application that tells you what you should be looking for, we're stuck, or we have been stuck with, let me get down to the data level, let me start cleaning up and seeing how I can make this more useful for me as an analyst. Or the other thing is, I usually go to my IT department or I open a ticket and say, I need this data cleaned up, send it to me by this date. And how many times, does this happen? And when it happens, you have this urgent requirement. How often is it in your organization that you get this request satisfied by IT or any other department that is in charge of data cleansing? This is where Watson Analytics helps, right? So this is where it makes it easier to manage, to maintain, self-service, depending on others, and you can give results faster with faster insights into your data. So coming back to some of the key features of Watson Analytics, one of the things that, the reason why it's called Watson Analytics is because it is built or derived from components of IBM Watson, which is the intelligent cognitive capability that IBM has developed over the last 10, 15 years. And so what this is just the analytics piece that sits on top of it, the cloud version, and that has natural language capability, where I like to call it as reverse Google, where if I want to find out information about something, I typically go to Google and type what I'm looking for. In this case, as soon as I upload my data or I've figured out what my data is going to be, the system actually comes back to me and says, Sanjeev, are you looking at these questions, or is this what you should be looking for? Or if you don't like our suggestions, feel free to type what you're looking for, right? And also what they've done is, with this guided analytics, is built in some additional features like predictive analytics, right? So it gives you the option to take your data and be able to predict outcomes based on your data. Now, if anyone is familiar with predictive analytics, the more rich your data is, the more depth. And what I mean by depth is historical depth, right? So if I can look at maybe a 2-year historical data set versus a 10-year historical data set, my patterns of prediction are enhanced when I'm looking at a much broader and deeper data set, right? So Watson Analytics gives you that capability to build predictive models within the environment. And they also have a social media aspect to this, right? So social media is a component that Tactical Institute is using today, where they can go out and search or crawl the web, look at all the different reviews, all the different news channels, social media websites, and pick information that they select to choose. Now, I'm not going to get into, I'm going to show you a quick demo, but I'm not going to get into, what Tactical is using today. That is their proprietary information that we've helped them with. But what I want to show you, as a resident of Dallas, I look at this page at least once a week. And this is the Dallas Police Department, and this is their official website. And just to tell you, this is from today, right? So this is what they have on their website. Now, if I want to quickly glance at this and see what does this mean, what's going on, what are the trends in Dallas based on crime or anything else that I should be concerned about as a parent, I would come in here, or I could start using Watson Analytics. Now, in the interest of time, in the interest of this webcast, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and show you what Watson Analytics looks like. So if you can see my screen all right, this is the initial welcome page when a person logs into Watson Analytics. And what you'll see is on the top bar, this is where you begin, you actually have 5 different subcategories depending on what you're trying to do. So someone like Oliver and his team at Tactical Institute would immediately start using the social media. And I'll show you how that works. But if I'm someone in an organization that just wants to explore data and wants to be able to track employee performance or look at how valuable my customers in the organization are, I would come into this Explore. The Predict section basically will help me take my data set and enable me to build predictive models very easily. So it's like having a statistician built in with you who, and because of guided analytics, is walking you through and telling you what you should be doing, right? So inbuilt wizards. They've also built very good documentation, so if you're lost at any point and you need to ask questions, you can always just click on those little help icons that'll tell you and guide you, kind of like hand-holding and tell you where you should be going. Assemble is more of the dashboard that you can build, right? So if I've built all these little data sets that I've brought into this environment, within this one page, within this one view, I can start building quick dashboards and look at how I can assemble the data together to get deeper insights. And finally, refine my data. So refine my data basically will allow me to go ahead. If I click on it, I've got 3 different data sources over here. So I've got valuable customer information, employee performance, and I pulled in the social media movies data set information as well. But I could basically click in, for example, on employee performance, and I could start looking at the fields that I've imported into my Watson Analytics, right? And then this basically shows me the columns, and I can scroll left and right. I can also, over here, create quick calculations. And just to show you how easy it is to create a calculation, this is basically it. This is how you can just name your column and build your calculation. You can use different types of calculations and embed this into your existing data source. So what we're going to do is we've already seen what kind of data sources we have. So if I just browse through this, this is basically looking at educational information, employee performance, trying to figure out if an employee is going to stick with us or they're not going to stick with us, and if they're going to leave based on, can I do some predictions to see what are the reasons why they would leave? Is it because of distance to work, job satisfaction, relationship with their manager satisfaction, and the performance as well? So if here you see this column, it shows performance. So this is sample data that we're working with, but you can always add your own data by clicking on Add, and you can basically either drop a file or browse to a file, or you can just upload a file. Now, if you're existing IBM software users, right, if you have products like the business intelligence product, that reporting capability that IBM provides through its analytics products such as Cognos, you can directly build a link to your Cognos reports and pull that data in here as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, show you one of these data sets now, going back to Twitter. And what I did was I looked at moments, and I pulled data from yesterday to be able to see what are the moments that we had on social media. So the one that we just had over here for a second, and social media changes all the time. So I've actually lost that. Maybe if I see under notifications and bring it back, yep, it's power of social media, right? Everything changes at a split second. So I had this 35 minutes ago on my screen, and it's gone now. But let me just pull this out here. So what I did was, on social media, what was trending yesterday was basically the new James Bond film, and I wanted to capture that information and just basically see what are people actually talking about the new James Bond film. And so what I started noticing was they were looking for a lead role, a female lead role, and so there are conversations on social media about, should we use, instead of using James Bond, should we use a Jane Bond, right? And so as a lead character in the movie. And so the lady from X-Files, Gillian Anderson, she's over here, so she was mentioned. And I basically just went ahead and just added some information saying, let me look at Gillian Anderson, Hollywood, as well as Jane Bond, and see what are people talking about on social media. I was able to pull in only the last 4 or 5 days of information, and so what this basically shows me that based on the topics that I've selected, right, and this is something that Tactical Institute will be doing as well. They would select certain topics with their expertise and with their knowledge that they think would be most accurate to figure out security threats. So in this case, in the 5-6 days that I've used, I can see I've actually gathered, or Watson Analytics has gathered 20,000 total documents, and there are 20,000 plus total mentions. Now, as a human being, this is impossible for me to go and analyze this data. And so what I started doing was I started building themes, and I added some themes such as first female bond, and wanted to see what people are actually talking about on social media about this. So this kind of gives me a quick, if I just reset my chart, gives me a quick idea of, based on the themes that I have selected, what are people actually talking about, how many people are talking about this, and where are they talking about from, what is their location, if they've turned on their geolocation. So what I'm looking at now is a drop-down list that gives me basically different dimensions of accessing this data. So if I click on sentiment, this basically shows me, based on what I've selected, based on the topics that I have created, what are people actually saying as a positive note, as a negative note, or just neutral about these topics, right? So based on all the data that I've selected, there are more people who are talking positive than negative on social media, which is a good thing. So maybe I'm getting more support for a Jane Bond film than James Bond film, right? I can also go down to location and start looking at where are people talking about this most. Now, this is giving me a map of the US, of the world, but I could also focus on the regions that I want to. So in this case, I'm going to focus on United States, right? And this is something that is not very new to Tactical Institute, right? Where they can basically drill down and go down to a level and look at and just start focusing on city as well as state locations. So while this is live presentation of what I just captured less than 12 hours ago, this is actually showing me information as to where most of the tweets are coming from. Now, just to make sure that I can limit my data and I make sure that I'm pulling in just a small set for demo purposes, I was able to pull in only Twitter information, right? So this allows me to go and pull in many more data sets or data sources that I could then merge using Watson Analytics, or let the product merge it for me and guide me in what I should be looking for. So within California, we can see we have the most tweets coming out of California, and second one was, let me just zoom out here, I believe it was New York State. And then we had Florida, we had Illinois, Texas, and so on. So I could even further drill down and look at this data by location. And I could scroll across, and as I scroll across, I would see which cities and which states are talking more about this topic that I've selected. Okay, I also have the option of switching from a visualization to looking at what my data set actually looks like. So this is the raw data, which is, social media, which is unstructured, right? As I showed you, I had thousands of tweets and thousands of posts across all social media platforms that I can pull in, and now that's converted for me into a tabular format, and I'm doing analysis based on that, right? I could also now look at it from a perspective of what are the sources, who are the active authors, what is their behavior, and as Watson Analytics brings the data back, we're actually looking at real-time analysis, right? So this is bringing me real-time, very, very valuable, and telling me what are people actually talking about. So these are the mentions. So these are the individuals that talk mostly about the topics that I've been that I've selected in my analysis, right? Once again, as it pulls this data in, it shows me different kinds of behavior types that I'm pulling in. This is not yet populated. Let it keep running, and we can come back to it. But let's look at this demographics, right? So this is the demographics of by gender. So we can see more females are talking about the topics that I've selected, but there's more, there's kind of an equal number of male and female gender type that are talking about Jane Bond as well as Hollywood as well. And then you can break it down into different subcategories, and this is as and when you choose, right? So if you're an organization that cares about brand image on social media, this is where you can select what you're actually looking for. Okay, so I'm going to go back. I've done my analysis. I come back out and I can say, you know what, I want to look at this from a tabular data set and start building some dashboards. I could do that. Now, what Watson Analytics does very well, it actually starts scoring your data. That's where this intelligence comes in. It tells me that the movie data set that I pulled out from my social media project is basically a low quality. Maybe I've not pulled in enough information. Like I said, I just pulled in 4 or 5 days of just Twitter data. I'm sure there must be a lot more news articles written about this that I've brought in as well. That would raise the quality of data, and which is what I did over here. So I took data that I could actually make more sense of, and I brought this into Watson Analytics as well. So I've got 2 different data sources. One is customer information, and one is employee information. So let me click on these real quick. So if I click on employee performance, so I've loaded the data, and the system is guiding me and saying, okay, based on the data that you have brought into Watson Analytics, as a product, we feel this is what you should be looking for. And so some of the questions are, what is the trend of monthly income over attrition? Or how do the values of distance from home compare to attrition and education? So this is what I call reverse Google, where the system is telling me, using its intelligence and the cognitive capability and narrative language, saying that this is what you should be looking for based on your data set. So I want to select distance from home. That might be a reason why employees start leaving. And so as and when we get into this system, we basically start seeing, while it's loading, it's just coming up here, but we start seeing that it's actually giving us multiple options and allowing us to start analyzing the data more in detail. So this is what it's actually looking for. I could start adding more columns if I want and change my data sets, right? If I can add a column and say, let me look at this by age as well. So if I click on age, I could add that over here. I could start looking at the data from by department, right? Before I do that, let me go ahead and click on this icon over here and I'll talk about it. So I'm just going to click on this and say collect. I'm going to come back and say, okay, let me look at this information from a departmental wise. So I see that more of my sales team is spread out, right? And I pretty much don't like the way this visualization looks, so I can change it to better suit my needs. I'm going to change this visualization from a bar chart to a bubble chart, and this will give me a quicker idea of where I have more of my sales folks that are coming to work compared to human resources or research and development, right? So the numbers basically will tell us this is very close, so maybe that's why in this situation a bar would make more sense. Or I could change this to a tree map, or you pick. You can pick what you're looking for. A line item, a pie chart would also make good sense, right? And what's nice about Watson Analytics is not just it tells you about what data you should be, what questions you should be asking for, but it also gives you recommendations on the visualization that you should pick. Okay? So once again, I'm going to go back to this and let's take another one. So I could even look at age by distance from home and look at this information. And as I showed you in the previous example, I was just clicking on this icon over here to just collect this information. What my main goal is that I'm doing my analysis. I'm spending 10, 15 minutes looking at this. And I say, you know what, I need to build a dashboard to give a full holistic view of what my data set, what my analysis is showing me. As I keep doing that, what it's going to do is it's going to collect the data that I choose to and put in the collections. Okay, so this is a holding area which just collects the data, and at the end of this session when I want to build my dashboard, I could very easily go do that, right? So before I jump into anything else, right here I could basically even type a question. What's a good question I could ask? Attrition by location or by age, maybe that's a better one. And what it does is it actually comes up with 2 examples and says, okay, these are the questions, based on the question that you've typed or the query you've typed, maybe these are the 2 reports that you can be looking at, right? Or if you don't know how to ask a question, this is where the guided analytics helps you and tells you, okay, pick a category, whether you want to do a data comparison, you want to understand relationships better, or whatever else is available based on the data that you've selected and what kind of values you want to pick and select, right? So this is how it's actually guiding you and saying, okay, this is the question that you should be asking. Very powerful stuff. Let me now go to the predict section. And in this predict section, what I've done is, once again, it's actually showing me the 3 different data sets that I have in my Watson Analytics environment. And what I could do is I could say, show me my customer information. And what this does is, whenever it comes back, it basically will show me, you're trying to pull a new analysis. So why don't you enter a workbook, kind of like a spreadsheet, but also I'm going to give you the option to select 5 targets. And each of these targets basically come from the data that we've focused on in this analysis. So this could be, show me the insurance information based on number of policies that a customer has, a customer lifetime. I could even look at marital status. I could look at all kinds of variables that I want to add into my analysis, maybe even gender as well. And I would click create, and it would start building me a quick analysis. So what I've done is I've pre-built this analysis, and what this actually shows me is a predictive model, right? So this is based on age. Now we're going back to employee information, but this basically says, all right, the quality of data is good. It's about 70, right? And 32 of 35 inputs were potentially useful, so it gives me a 91 analysis detail score. And I can start looking at other variables that are making this prediction the way it is. Now what this is looking at is just one field of predictive strength. So as and when I add more combinations, what this does is it improves my chances and my predictive score. As and when I add more combinations and try to get, my goal is to get as closer to the one of these circles, to bring them as close as possible to the central concentric circle. And what that will help me determine is, as you can see, this predictive score is increasing as and when I change the variables. And what that does is, let's say if I go back to 2-field analysis, and you watch on the right-hand side, the charts basically change based on what I'm looking for. So if I click on this over here, this basically tells me, all right, so based on my selections, each cell will represent age, average at a combination of categories, and the number of companies worked at, and the job level. So this analysis will tell me the predictive strength is 38% of any analysis that I want to do based on customer employee satisfaction and employee attrition. Right? When I go to the combination, this now basically brings me a decision tree map, which basically tells me, based on the combinations, right, what is the probability based on job level and number of companies worked at and job involvement and attrition, what is the likelihood that someone based on these criteria is going to stay versus on some other criteria is going to leave. So if I'm in the HR department, or if I'm a decision maker or a manager, I can make that decision to say, you know what, maybe we need to change our company policy or add some more incentives to make sure that the employee sticks around. All right, so I'm going to go back to my home screen, and I'm going to click on assemble something that I was doing previously. If it's not yet here, that's fine. I'm going to go ahead into assemble, and I'm going to pick employee performance. And as I showed you earlier, I was actually building my collections. So if I just come in here and pick any kind of dashboard that I want to select, it could be a single page, it could be a tabbed dashboard. I could build infographics from a marketing perspective. I could build a storyboard where I have time journeys, slideshows, and so on. I'm just going to keep it simple. A typical dashboard structure of 4 quadrants, and how do I input the data that I've been analyzing. And I can basically say, okay, these are the reports that I added to my collection, and I can just drag and drop that and start building my dashboard. So what I'm doing right now is I'm actually building my employee performance dashboard view, And as when I pull this information out, it's going to build my dashboard, and I'm going to start seeing data in a visualized format. So while this is running, what I can also do is I can export this via email. I could even have this shared amongst my employees in the organization, and I could also export this to a PDF. So what I've done over here is prior to the webcast, and while this is still loading here, there it is. So I can just organize the data and just move things around so they fit the quadrants. All right, just move this up here. But let me do that. Let me just quickly show you. I just did a share, and this is a PDF. And what you can see is this was just less than an hour, actually exactly an hour ago that I built this out. But this actually exports my dashboard and brings it into this PDF format that I could print out, share via email, whatever else that I want to do with it. So this is exactly what I wanted to spend on the demo time. I know we have a few more slides to go through, but more than happy to answer any questions that you might have in the session, in the Q&A session. With that, I'm going to pass it back to Oliver. And Oliver, do you have anything else? Let me bring up your slide deck here.
Yeah, I think in the interest of time, I just want to show real quick, right. We'll skip the next few slides, but the other item that Watson Analytics has been very helpful with is basically what our founder calls our going back in time machine. We have, the one before that is fine. We have a lot of times where we actually do the forensic investigation where there's a cold case. This one happened to be in Chicago where they had a shooting, an unsolved homicide, and the police department asked us to get involved to see if we could find the perpetrators or the suspects, and we were actually, just through some tangential information, we're able to then find some of the individuals, and actually we're able to track them down to an individual apartment where those two illegal weapons you can see on the right-hand side were actually tied to the homicide itself. So Watson Analytics is very good with helping us to actually sift through stuff, be it items such as this, or especially also on the deep and dark web, where there's a lot of financial fraud being committed. And we've certainly been able to train Watson Analytics how to help us in assisting us in that mission there. So that being said, Sanjeev, can we go forward about 4 slides just to the successes? One more. There you go. So one back. If you can go back, one more. While we're a relatively new company, I explained to you the evolution of, one more back please, the evolution of Tactical Institute from GeoCop. We have had quite a number of successes in our short time frame. We identify a lot of school shootings. We've officially been credited with identifying 12 plus potential school shootings. I did an analysis and the number is actually closer to 50 since the Sandy Hook tragedy. And this is a global service. We have near instant language translation capabilities, which include Arabizi, which was a Twitter language developed last year that combines Arabic as well as English, so that they can utilize it on Twitter. But you can see here, obviously in UK and Australia, it's very easy because they're in English. But we've also identified potential attacks in Germany, Japan, and Italy. You can see multiple other ones that we have been able to identify, and you can see with the Super Bowl, it's it's kind of amazing that they spend hundreds of millions of dollars in security, and here is a Tactical Institute who finds threats that were before us unknown to law enforcement. So if we can just go to slide 40, which is the summary slide. I just wanted to recap this. Unfortunately, the world is becoming not a safer place, but a more dangerous place. One more, please, Sanjeev. And the threat landscape is definitely increasing rather than decreasing. So I think there is not a more pertinent time than right now for a pre-intelligence service to be out there that has the ability to, on a persistent basis, meaning 24/7, to look for threats against clients, be it in the United States or allied countries around the world. And it does take, our certified threat specialists, our patented or our invented ETradecraft in order to do this. And we really believe, with the addition of Watson Analytics, that we are the best at this in the world. So that being said, that's all I have. I really want to thank everybody and for your time, and I'll turn it back over to Candace.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Oliver and Sanjeev, for the presentation. We will go over some questions right now. I know we're running out of time a little bit, so I do want to let you know you can still submit your questions via our control panel on your screen. And if for some reason we don't answer them on the webinar today, that's no problem. We will reach out to you directly and make sure we provide you with an answer. The first question that I have for you, Oliver, is can you please explain the dark web in a little bit more depth?
Sure. Basically, the deep dark web is the unstructured portion of the web. And again, as I mentioned, it composes about 90% of the entire internet. And it is that portion of the web that is not searchable by Google, Ask.com, Bing, etc., because again, it is unstructured. So the deep web is the bigger component of that side of the internet. And the deep web, basically, you can go as long as you know the URL. The website address. You can go in there typically with unfettered access, meaning unrestricted password access, and that's where a lot of this stuff, nefarious activities happen. The dark web is actually a subsection of the deep web, and it is where it really is password restricted. It is where, if you're familiar with Silk Road, which was this humongous online illegal drug marketplace, that's where they reside. And that this is where I mentioned earlier that it is dangerous to be, because these hackers, these black hats, they're very good at what they do, and they do not appreciate outsiders coming into listening on their conversations, etc. So unless you have the specialized techniques to be able to protect your technology, your servers, etc., which we do, they can very easily, immediately infect your system with malware, spyware, etc., steal your identity, and do all those bad things that they do.
Okay, great. Thank you, Oliver. The next question is for you as well, and it is, why don't all schools have your service?
That's a great question. We've been trying to get in touch with the Department of Education, because they know that there is an immediate threat, and it's growing against schools. The issue with it is they have not funded a sustained effort to be able to provide this, at least to the public school systems, which typically don't have a lot of money allocated to this. So what we've actually done is we've launched, and you can go to our website at www.tacticalinstitute.com. We've launched a national school safety program where we are heavily subsidizing our service. So whereas our typical clients pay thousands, tens of thousands of dollars a month for our service, we have brought this down to hundreds of dollars for these schools, just so that they have the ability to, for us to protect them on a 24/7 basis.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Oliver. That is all the time we do have for questions. Again, if your question did not get answered, we will reach out to you directly and provide an answer. Before we do end the webcast, I do want to let you guys know of some more upcoming events that you can see on the screen here that we have. We have a Pure Data Analytics Workshop in June 22nd in Dallas, Texas. We have a Predictive Customer Intelligence webcast on June 23rd. And this is a little bit more relevant to the topics we discussed today. We'll have a Watson Analytics and Data Watch Monarch webcast on July 7th. So you can register for all of these events on our webpage that you see on the screen there, or you can email us and we can get that set up for you. Also, please feel free to reach out to us regarding Watson Analytics or any information that you're seeking for Tactical Institute. Our phone number is 844-6-CRESCO. You can visit our website at crescointl.com, or you can follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/Cresco_INTL. And we do have a lot of really valuable Watson Analytics videos that you can watch on demand on our YouTube page, which is youtube.com/Cresco_INTL. Also, please feel free to reach out to Oliver. You can see his contact information there on the screen, as well as their website. This does conclude the webcast for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We really appreciate it. And again, we did record the webcast, and we'll be sending the link of the recording as soon as it is available. Sanjeev or Oliver, do you guys have anything else that you would like to add?
I just want to thank everybody today. That's it.
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone who's attended and who's watching, and I want to thank Oliver and everyone at Technical for being a great, not just a great client, but also doing great service to the community. I think what you guys are doing with IBM technology is fascinating and commendable. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanjeev. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and have a great day.